Hey everyone, I am super excited to bring you today's episode of We Move Through Stormy Weather featuring Megan Glionna of HF Pod. We're going to talk about the Moma Dance and get into some really incredible discussion. Keep listening in for that. Before we dive in, I want to take a minute to tell you about Versio Wellness. The Versio functional mushrooms are here to help right now, whether you are gearing up for a show, going to sleep afterwards, or recovering and restoring the day after. Using varieties like lion's mane, chaga, reishi, and more, the Versio concentrates the health benefits from these potent fruiting bodies into a supplement with a variety of applications. I take their lion's mane focus blend every morning and really enjoy the boost it gives me throughout the day. Order your Versio now with code STORMSOUND15, which gives you 15% off your order and it ships anywhere in the US or Canada. Welcome back to We Move Through Stormy Weather, a podcast by Storm Sound. My name is Ryan Storm, and today I am joined by Megan Glionna. Megan has been listening to and thinking about music for as long as she can remember. After falling in love with the Grateful Dead in high school, she remembers being handed Rift on cassette in 1994 and being absolutely blown away. Ever since, Megan has been seeing Phish, collecting memories, and dancing endlessly. In 2021, she joined the Helping Friendly podcast as a co-host and loves talking Phish with fellow Phish nerds, interviewing musicians, and recording live podcasts at Osiris Media live events. Megan is also a teacher and a writer, most recently published in JamBase. She lives with her family in Brooklyn, New York. Hi, Megan.
Hi, Ryan.
How are you?
I'm great. I'm really glad to be here with you today. This is fun.
I'm very excited. That you're here too. We've been working on scheduling this around tour and everything for a while now, but I'm very excited to sit down and talk Phish with you. You know, we have a lot of podcast experience together already.
We do. We've done
Yes.
a lot. Yeah, HF Pod and this recent collab we did for the Tab Goose Tour.
Yeah, and if you haven't heard those Taboose recaps or seen them, check them out. They were a lot of fun. Collaborating with HF Pod, Always Almost There, and Great Beyond for every show of that tour. So let's dive in, Megan. Tell me the story. How did you get into Phish?
Well, you talked about it a little bit in the intro, but yeah, I was a huge Deadhead in high school. Huge Deadhead. And I got into them because I liked a group of boys and they were older than me and they were into the Grateful Dead. And so I was like, whatever I need to do to hang out with these cool guys, I'm going to do. And you know, they were like Midwesterners, like lacrosse players and hockey players, and they would wear like flannels and Grateful Dead t-shirts. And I'm like, what is this Grateful Dead? And they started playing it a lot for me. And I just was totally in love with it and also in love with them, but especially in love with the Grateful Dead.
but
and it
more the music.
More the music, yeah. It kind of like opened up this Pandora's box for me, as it does to anybody who gets into the Grateful Dead and loves them. And I just was listening to everything I could. I started seeing them in 93 and when I was 16, and then I just saw them as much as I could before Jerry died. But in 94, someone handed me Rift, and I don't remember who it was, which is funny, but someone handed me the cassette, and I went home and I took it home, and I remember I was sitting there in my room, and I opened up the cassette, and it was like, you know, the cover art and like all these crazy lyrics. It was just this like thematic album, and it just sounded so of the moment in a way that the Grateful Dead felt more historical to me. You know, it was like I grew up listening to like 70s rock from my parents and classic rock, and the Grateful Dead was always kind of that era. Even though my parents weren't into the Dead, it was like their era music. And so this felt like it was mine. And I finally got to see them in fall of 94, got to see Phish, and I couldn't believe it. It was Grand Rapids, Michigan, my hometown where I grew up. And I think it was November 18th or 14th, something around there. And I should know that date, but I think it was the 18th. And it was an amazing show. It was like 18th row, and they opened up with my friend. And I just couldn't even believe it. There's a bunch of footage of that show actually on the Bluegrass Sessions.
Yes.
So there's a bunch of footage.
I see it was 11:14 and there's a 26-minute Bowie.
That Bowie's insane. And there's footage of that on there. They had like fans on the stage, like blowing air. It was just a really crazy thing. But the thing that to me stood out the most about Phish when I saw them live for the first time was their connection to the audience. You know, when you go and see the Grateful Dead, they just are kind of like emoting and you're receiving. There's never kind of like, it didn't feel like a give and take, like when I was seeing them in the, at the bitter end.
Right.
And seeing Phish like on the edge of the stage, like looking at us, like at one point they had like that mini acoustic set and they played the mandolin. Fishman was playing the mandolin and like talked to somebody in the audience who said they loved the mandolin. And Trey was like, he's going to give a mandolin solo for you. And like, Fishman did like this little flourish. And there was just like an engagement and an interest in the fans that I thought was
Mhm.
super unique and cool and exciting. And it was just, I felt like I was in the beginning of something. Even though it wasn't their beginning, but it felt like that to me.
It was the beginning of their big rise, though. Like,
Yeah.
you were still seeing them in a smaller venue before they would, kind of move more to arenas the next year. So that's really cool. Did you go from your first show and immediately be like, okay, I need to see them 18 more times before the end of the fall, or did you not immediately start seeing them a ton right after?
I saw them as soon as I could, but that was, next summer in Deer Creek in June.
Oh, you got that for a dinner and a movie too.
Yeah, I know, it was amazing. That was the first 1.0 show, I think, that they played, but yeah, it was amazing. I mean, I think for me, I was a senior in high school. I didn't have a lot of disposable income. I wasn't gonna be able to, like, jump on tour. I
Right.
also was seeing a lot of Grateful Dead then. I saw a lot of Grateful Dead in that fall and in the next, summer, so I kind of split that next summer of '95 between, like, Phish and Dead, and was seeing a lot of Grateful Dead then still. So I was super into Phish. I was listening to a lot of Phish. I started collecting tapes then, but I was definitely still in the Grateful Dead world. But the
Mhm.
minute I went to college at University of Arizona, and the minute that fall of '95, and Jerry passed away that summer, and that minute I was like completely for Phish. And so
Mhm.
then I started seeing Phish like obsessively that fall.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Got it. Got it. And so the song you picked today is also I know it's one of your favorite songs. Your social media handle is based off of it as well.
It is.
We're gonna be talking about MoMA today, which is a song that I have been very excited to talk about on the podcast. We haven't done it yet. You did steal my favorite version, which is okay because it's kind of you know,
It's the
people will
best.
say that it's not the best one, but it's 100% the best one. And like, I think that's just people being biased against Summer 2016.
Yeah.
And like, this show has nothing to listen to other than this MoMA. But 7316 is your pick, and I agree. It's the GOAT.
It's the best. I don't know who these people are that's saying it's not the best, but I agree with you. It's the best.
Those are the jaded vets that are like, oh, I like this 1998 version, or like
Yeah.
the 22603, I think it is, but
That's a good one.
it is good, but it's not
Yeah.
better than this.
No, I agree. This show's great, and I agree. 2016, a weird time. I only saw one show that whole year. I saw the New Year's Eve show, the Petrichor, which was incredible.
Yeah.
But also just like that. I don't know. That was a weird year for me, and I wasn't super connected to Phish then. It was kind of right before I was like about to get super connected to them again during the Baker's Dozen.
How many of the
Yeah,
dozen did you do?
I did three. I did the first one, um, Maple Night in the middle, and then I did the last one.
Oh,
So I
nice.
did, yeah, I couldn't see a ton, so I decided strategically that I wanted to see. I actually had tickets to the first night and then the Maple Night, and then after Maple Night, I was like, "I have to be there on the
Hmm.
last night." I knew we were
Yeah.
gonna have that yam. I was like, "I have to be there," and I paid a small fortune, and I don't even care. It was totally worth it.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's one of the few shows where I've heard of a ton of people who like actually got shut out of it.
Yeah,
Because usually it's like, everybody gets in if they want to get
yeah.
in, but yeah, people weren't getting into that show, which is crazy to think that, like, earlier in the run, like Jam Filled and Powder Night, there were no people behind the stage, like it was super undersold.
Insane. Yeah, they showed them.
Never sleep on Phish doing anything.
No.
Um, but yeah, no, summer 2016 was weird for them because you have these incredibly bright spots of improvisation, like this MoMA, coming the last night at SPAC. Then you also have shows where there's just like nothing, and it's the influx of the big boat songs. It just seemed that they weren't really interested in jamming all that much in a lot of places. And it's weird because you get some shows that are like super complete, super amazing, and then the next night there's nothing really want to go to. Or the inverse of that, like at the end of the summer tour, like they played at the Forum in LA, and that show was just like kind of a dud. And then the next night in Chula, which that's a venue they have an incredible track record at.
Yeah.
But that 72316 show, you have incredible jams, the return of the jammed out tube, a long 2001 for the era, like just, so it was a weird year for sure. And
Yeah.
I mean, I think starting at Dick's and through the fall and end of the year, it got a lot better.
Yeah, I think that as they're also, like, thinking about the baker's dozen, right? I think that, like, slow creep towards that was so inspiring for them. So I think they
Mhm.
actually, like, built up, and obviously that summer before baker's dozen was great, and the baker's dozen was spectacular. So I think that it was definitely, like, a moment when they were looking for more inspiration, and they found it.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting to me about, this year as a whole is Trey's playing is absolutely phenomenal. Like,
Mhm.
in this MoMA, I think most people who, maybe don't listen to 2016 a lot or haven't heard this version a good number of times would probably expect, this to be more Page led or Mike led, than but Trey from the first note of the song is just like all in, like he's playing so assertively, and it sounds so good, like his fills on the opening vamp, like it's crazy to hear.
Yeah, I actually wrote that down too. He just felt like he seems like in the pocket right away. Like he's
Hmm.
completely locked in, like right away. And it's true. It's like it's not a great show. There's 12 songs in the first set. Like that's a lot. 10
Yeah,
songs in the second set. When you look at this on Live Fish, they actually like have a video of this MoMA because it's clearly like the only thing from the show that's like
right, like
redeemable.
there's no
Yeah.
reason to put the full show up. Yeah.
No, they're like, here's the video of just what you need here. But it's a great video to watch. It's like interesting too, because you are reminded what the 2016 light rig was like with those
Right.
screens behind, and you're like,
Yeah.
whoa, like it was so overwhelming and like overpowering. But it's a great video to watch to see how they're playing. I mean, Fishman has his eyes closed like the whole entire time, which is just fascinating.
Well,
But
he's
Trey
the
is
MVP of this jam.
100%. I mean, the one thing about this jam is that it's super rhythmic the whole time. Even though it's like a journey and it goes from like funk to dark to light to space, but it's super rhythmic the whole time, which is my favorite shit for sure.
Yeah, it's a cool video for sure. I was very excited when they put that up on the app a few years ago. But yeah, it's also cool because 2016 was an interesting year for Trey's guitar tone too, because over the course of the year he was like experimenting with different amps, and like during the summer I think he cycled through pretty much all of his guitars, just trying to see which one he wanted to stick with. Um, and so it's his tone was like super super meaty in 2016. This is when he's using his Fender Deluxe Reverb for the first time since I think 2.0,
Oh,
and
wow.
then he's putting it through his classic Languedoc cabinets, which would be closer to what he was using in the late 90s, but it sounds very different on this tour. I think he had different pickups on his guitars at this point still, that he had switched out for Fare Thee Well, kind of changing to more of that Jerry tone, but he had changed the pickups on a bunch of his guitars, which was interesting. And then in the fall of 2016, he would go to that like the Marshall amp, which is like the Hendrixy, Clapton, whatever, like that sound. So it was an interesting year for his sound. I really like it here. The soundboards from 2016 have a lot of Fishman in it, and a lot like 2015, not a lot of Mike. So it's harder to focus on Mike. Like I would notice time to time, like, wow, Mike's doing really cool shit here, but like even towards the end when he's dropping these huge bombs, they don't have that much volume to them, which
Yeah, I know. It's a shame. It's a real
yeah.
shame. I was doing that too when I was watching. I was trying to like isolate Mike, and it's actually kind of tricky to do. It's hard to do, which is the shame, especially in a song like MoMA, which is like such a funky, like
Yeah.
bass driven song. This song is like, I mean, and that's it's interesting that you say that about Trey's tone because in my notes I was saying I didn't love his tone in this song, but it works. There's something about the way he's like about 9 minutes in. I don't know if he's using an effect pedal, but there's like
Hmm.
this menacing feeling that kind of comes into the
Yeah.
jam. Like before that, it's like funky and groovy and like jazzy. There's like this relaxed undercurrent. You've got Page on keyboards and Fishman is though like pushing at energy. But then like Trey comes in with this effect pedal, it sounds like, and there's this like dark feeling, and I don't love that tone, but he repeats this phrase over and over again. I don't know if it's on a delay or not, but it works. It really
Yeah.
works. It's
Yeah.
cool sounding. And then Paige comes in on the piano and it just totally elevates it. And I think him and Paige are just so locked in. And that's when you really like, I miss hearing Mike because he's dropping bombs that whole time, but you can't
Right.
like, you can't like catch it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, a lot of great Trey Page interplay in this jam for sure. Right from the get-go, it's cool. So I didn't even say which version I picked yet because we got so excited about this one. But I picked 812 22, which is from this past summer, like very, very strong MoMA. I kind of like how it's become more of a jam vehicle since 4.0 started,
Yes. Love that.
which is nice. I was going back and forth between that and the Baker's Dozen and 815 21. And I picked this one. I really like it because it's one of the few big jammed out MoMAs that finishes itself. But
Yeah.
just not wanting to leave 7.3.16 behind yet. The contrast that I noticed, which is cool, is for the SPAC 2016 one, as soon as Fishman finishes his like sing along portion of Trey's guitar solo, Trey hits this huge dirty like wah chord to signify like, okay, like we're gonna jam this out, and it's like on the first note of where his extended solo would be. In the 8-12-22 version, they go through the regular jam, and it sounds like Trey is wrapping it up to be like a 6 or 7 minute version, like 3 times in the span of like a minute. He like plays the ending lick, and it's like, okay, and then it's gonna end, and then that one departs into a jam, not like kind of just as kind of like downshifting into a groove like the 7.3.16 one did. Trey does like weird off-kilter delay stuff, and then Fishman's doing fills. And then there's this period like around 8 minutes or 8.5 minutes where the whole jam just kind of feels off in a really cool way, just because, Trey's got these weird things going and Fishman's doing weird things. And like, it's really cool. differences in the band's sound between the two. You know, obviously 2016, you know, Page doesn't have these synths that would become so prevalent yet. You know, Trey doesn't have these synth tones. You know, so it's more of like a classic feel to it, I think, with just straight like electric piano, guitar, whatever. But yeah, it's cool to compare.
It's so cool to compare. Yeah, I think that moment when Trey starts like soloing over it in the SPAC version, it's like that classic uplifting Trey solo, and it's so cool because you can
Yeah.
hear the crowd just like roar. It's just that perfect Trey. You would never mistake it for anybody else, right?
Yeah, it's at like 11 and a half minutes or so.
Yeah,
Like,
and it's
yeah, you
just
just
like
hear them all like, yeah.
it's the Trey peak, and then it peaks, and they just like all meander. And Trace comes out with this like really piercing and tender, really high pitched, like beautiful solo. And then they find their way back to like this cool groove, and it just melts into like this
Mhm.
really sweet and like serene place. And then they start pulling out all these like space sounds, but then Trey somehow is playing this like rock and roll riff. It's very cool. The ending of it to me sounds like very effortless and patient. And I love how it like has this like dissonant melt into twist. I think that the ending of this, even though it's like nothing's more satisfying, like you're
Mhm.
saying your version, from the summer at Alpine is like very satisfying because it comes back like, and you know that Trey loves that shit when it like ends perfectly.
I love it when they
Yeah, I
find
do
the song again.
too. Yeah,
You
it's
know.
like, yes, here we are again. But this one is cool. Like if it's not gonna come back to the song, like to kind of melt into this like weird spacey dissonance is pretty cool.
Yeah, and what's cool also about the SPAC version is I felt like it could have ended just before the 14-minute mark, but because Phish was just he was playing, like he did not stop for a second throughout this whole jam. At the end, it's like it feels so reluctant for him to be like, okay, fine,
Yeah.
like we'll stop. But you know, he is just carrying the momentum forward, like does not lose a bit. Like, you know, the first peak, you know, kind of fades a little bit, and he just keeps pushing until Trey finds that second huge peak progression, and they go around again. Like it's awesome. It's
It's
awesome.
amazing to watch him. Like, you know, listening to it is one thing, but to watch him do it with his eyes basically closed and just like he's just amazing to watch. I think that
Yeah.
like getting to sit behind him at MSG or getting to be close to him and watch him, it's like I actually don't watch the band very often, but when I'm near Fishman, sometimes I just can't help it because he's just
Right.
captivating, you know?
Yeah. Oh, he's so good. But what's also, you know, big contrast between the two is how, you know, how the vocals go, because
Yeah.
you know, obviously after the Beacon jams, Trey has fallen madly in love with that way of singing it,
Na
which
na 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 na. Yeah.
I now have a hard time singing along to Moma without like the Moma Dance. Like
Yeah,
I do that all the
exactly.
time now, and I blame Trey.
It's his
But
fault.
yeah, he does that little intro thing uh in an Alpine. You know, obviously the 2016 one before all that is very like, you know, this is how the song is going. Like, you know, Trey doesn't come in over the main chorus. But you know, interesting feel, and obviously, you know, 2022, much like 2016, has proven to be kind of a divisive year for people. Like, I
Yeah.
think that 2022 is a much better year than 2016,
Oh,
on the
yeah.
strength of the improv alone. I think there is a greater degree of consistency, while still recognizing that like there were a good number of shows that are pretty meh,
Yeah, and I
from
think
the
that
summer.
2022 has the unfortunate effect of coming after 2021.
Right.
Which
Yeah.
was,
Like,
an
yeah.
unbelievable year. So, like, I think the expectations were just so high that
Hmm.
it was hard. I mean, I can think of so many shows I saw this summer that were fucking incredible,
Yeah.
But I think that, like, people are, like, wanting fall 2021 was just it was next level.
It was incredible. Yeah. And
Mhm.
I think it's also something like, 2019 had the misfortune of coming after 2017 and 18, which was 2 years in a row of just
Yeah.
absolute peak level Phish. And then 2019 was a bit of a step down, which, I talked about this with Jonathan on the last episode, where it's kind of, they take a step back and it's like, okay, where are we going to go from here? Because we've hit this peak in,
Yeah.
we hit this peak in 2015. We hit this peak in 2017, 18. We hit this peak in 2021. Now where are we going to go from here? Because Phish is not a band that's going to be like, okay, we hit this peak. Let's just keep doing that every year. They
Yeah.
need to find something new. That's why they keep changing all of their gear. That's why that's why they're jamming out different songs. Like MoMA was not a song that was ever really a jam vehicle outside of like, we're going to extend this funk vamp a little bit. And now they're jamming it out. They're picking new avenues, like the end of Free at Blossom instead of the actual jam segment of it.
Yeah.
So like, I wonder what happens if we do that.
Yeah, and it's cool. I mean, if you think MoMA too, which is actually like came out of Black Eyed Katie, which is an instrumental, right? And an instrumental jam that was like, I actually saw it during one of the best encores like I've ever seen in my entire life during the
12:30
famous
97.
Yeah, yeah. So, that was like the 7th time and the last time it was ever played, and that was the last time it would ever be, this instrumental Black Eyed Katie, and then it turns into MoMA, and I think it's just such a product of '97, which is probably why I love it so much, but, I think it's cool because this song that was an instrumental becomes kind of a more standard song, and then now it's a jam vehicle, like, that is so Fish to me.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really cool, and, we've talked about before, like sample being a jam vehicle
Yeah.
now, like, huh?
It's the best.
Like it's so crazy to see, you know, how different
Mull? I
songs
mean,
can
like
fill that road. Yeah.
who would've thought?
Maul's recently debuted though, and it was like, okay, like
Yeah.
this song could jam. Like Sample's been around for, 27 years,
And
28
it's like
years
their
now.
most, like, radio hit that never was,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
exactly. And it's like, we're just gonna jam this for 15 minutes now. Don't worry about it. Which also, that kind of thing all kind of started at the dozen. There were
Yeah.
a few instances of it before, like, the Northerly Wedge in 2014, where they were randomly, okay, we're gonna jam this out. And I just heard that jam the other day for the first time in a really long time, and I was like, whoa, like I forgot how good it
I
is.
haven't listened to that in a very long time. I'm gonna
I
listen
I would
tonight.
highly recommend it. I was listening to it, and then around like the 11-minute mark, there's like this shift where Trey just takes it into like soaring peak land, and it's
Yes.
amazing. Yeah. But back to the topic at hand.
Yes.
Um, one other cool thing that Trey has been doing a lot recently is teasing "Let It Grow,"
Mm.
and he does that in this MoMA around 9 minutes and 25 seconds ish. Um, I'm a big tease notating guy. If you
I
didn't know that
love
about
that
me.
about you. I am the opposite. I am like, "This jam is awesome," and I don't really know what's going on or what tease is happening, and then someone tells me later, I'm
But you
like,
know that it's
"Cool."
good.
But I know that it's good, yeah. I think this is a really, really satisfying version, like I said before. It has the hallmarks of 2022 with, like you said, Trey singing, then like the like Beacon Jam intro, and then also Fishman's dropping his effects, which is so like what defines summer 2022,
Yeah.
all these like funky effects he's doing. And again, Trey also seems super locked in right away. Like he has this like cool, there's like I don't know, just some extra like goodness to the jam in the
Mustard.
intro. Yeah, some mustard in there. And then after the song part, like you were talking about before, he just starts playing these like frantic notes. and putting on his delay loop, I think, and Paige is just absolutely killing it on the
Yeah.
piano. It's just that's the one thing I love about this song is that there's always this like balance of like funk and grit with this like elevated piano work that I think is just why the song to me is has a lot of depth to it. Also the lyrics, I think this is an incredibly well-written song lyrically. They're so ambiguous. Like it could mean so many things. It's
Yeah.
I think one of their most successful songs lyrically.
Interesting. Yeah, I've never really Phish is not a band where I spend a lot of time thinking about the lyrics, which is funny that you mentioned it. But yeah, I have no idea what this song is about. The name of the song doesn't give any clues either because I think it's just like a mispronunciation of the
The
moment
moment
ends.
ends.
Like
Yeah, which is yeah, but that's like the moment ends, right? Like is the song about drugs? Is it about love? Is it about sex? I mean, it's about that moment ending, right? Who knows? But
yeah,
that's why it's so good, right? It could be
who
about any
knows?
of those things. Yeah, it's a very, I think, lyrically, I'm someone who connects to lyrics a lot. And I think that
Hmm.
sometimes Fish has the best lyrics. Thank you, Tom Marshall. And sometimes they don't. And I think that like when they do, for me, it always hits really deep. And I think MoMA is one of those songs. The song is
Hmm.
just, it's also just sexy, which is the best.
Yes, and that is very largely due to Mike's bass line.
Yeah.
Which it's such a good
Turn
bass
that
line.
up.
And yeah, and it's popped up in a couple of jams like the 72418 Carini. He's just playing that bass line for a few minutes when
Yeah.
they get into this nasty funk jam, and it's great. It works so well.
So well.
Yeah. Yeah. But what's cool about this one too is I hadn't listened to it in a little while, and I kind of remembered it being this like warm major key jam, but that really only happens for a little bit.
Hmm.
There's a lot more like weird stuff happening, and like kind of searching. It's a very searching jam. It's 17, almost 18 minutes, and you know obviously the SPAC one, they know exactly where they're going to go, and
Yeah.
like while there is searching within it, it doesn't feel like they're searching. They're just kind of like, all right, we're pushing, and that's due to Fishman's really pushing that jam, whereas in the Alpine one, he's taking more of a support role. He's a
Hmm.
little more laid back in his playing. It's a little slower, which is that's 2022. Um, in some places though, which is weird. Like I remember webcasting some of the spring tour and being like, whoa, like they're playing really fast for right now. Like it's kind of
I,
weird.
I don't I don't believe this whole nonsense that Fish can't play fast anymore. I can play you a maze
They
from
can.
MSG this year that's just insanity. I think that like
Yeah.
they still can play really fast. Yeah.
Yeah, like they'll get to spaces in jams where they're playing at like breakneck speed, but
Totally.
but they'll play stuff like Weekapog at a much slower tempo, which is interesting. Like I remember, late 2017, like that New Year's run, in the first set, you get this Mike's Groove that's kind of like slow and a little bit like feels a little lethargic in places. And then you get this 27-minute Disease that opens up the second set that, by like minute 22, they're just like at like a breakneck pace, like peaking all over the place. And it's like, how do they get here? Like,
Well, and maybe they're tired of playing some of those songs super fast. I mean, how many years did they play all of those songs at a breakneck speed?
right.
A lot. And for me, that's not always my favorite Fish. Like, I love listening to those early 90s, Fish. It's so tight. It's like so crisp. It's so clean, but it's not always the most like listenable stuff. It's not really stuff you like put on to like chill or just like enjoy it. It's very
Right.
intense. It's like it's fast. And I don't know. I like this. I like the pace that they're going at now, but I know a lot of people have a lot to say about
Yeah, I
it.
I don't think it's like offensively slow. Like it's not dead and code
No.
speeds by any means. Like, there's still a lot of energy in it. There's still a decent amount of pep to it. It's just comparing it to how they were playing it 25 years ago when they were 25 years younger and, on a lot of cocaine. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's slower.
A little
Like
different.
are they going to get to the speed of the 12:31:95 Johnny Be Good ever again? Probably not.
And do we want them to be there? I don't know. I don't
No.
even really want them to be there
No.
anymore.
I don't
I'd
know
rather
I don't
Troy
know
stay like
what
alive.
yeah, I don't know what they went backstage and had at the encore break before coming back on to do that. But
It
it
was 95. They had a
was
lot of
something.
stuff, I'm
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
it was something. Um, but yeah, and the Alpine Jam is cool too because you get these synth tones from Page, and then it kind of feels like it feels like it's gonna return to MoMA around 15 and a half minutes without hitting like a big peak. But then it's kind of like a false thing. Like Trey to me a couple of times like is like playing around a variation on the MoMA lick. So if you like
Hmm.
looked at the notes that he's playing, it is not anywhere close to the riff of the jam, but listening to it, I was kind of like, okay, like that's kind of like almost being the MoMA lick. Like, like it's complicated how it kind of works in my brain, but it made sense to me when I was thinking about it earlier.
That's really cool. That's something I don't know if I'd be able to identify just by listening because I'm a layperson and I'm not a musician, but I totally get it. I think that, like,
Maybe you know what you're talking about.
yeah, I mean, thank you. Uh, this one to me, what like stood out a lot is that it goes a lot of different places and it varies in tone a lot. Like it gets really like delicate and rhythmic and Trey's doing the like solo, but then he starts doing these like crazy like scream like rips that are just
Hmm.
really dramatic and you can hear him like yelling at one point like yeah, like he's really ripping at the end and the crowd is just like getting like worked up into this frenzy. And as they peak, you can hear them like about to bring it back and it's so satisfying when it does, like, because you can hear it. It's like being hinted at, and maybe that's what you're talking about, that you can
Hmm.
almost hear the lick, but it's not there yet, like, and then you're just like, "Is that MoMA?" And then it just, like, comes back in a way that's just totally seamless. It's a beautiful ending. I mean, really, really great, solid ending.
Yeah, and I love the way that they drop from the peak into this funk groove for a few measures before hitting back into MoMA. Like
Mhm.
they go into this funk groove, Trey's vamping, and then he brings in the MoMA lick, and they kind of transition well back into it, which is good. Like obviously there are some jams recently that they've kind of brute forced a return to the ending that
Yeah.
hasn't been the cleanest. But this one worked really well. I'm very much enjoying the ongoing saga of MoMA being a jam vehicle. This is one of the very few finished versions that we've got that have been jammed out. Usually it just kind of goes off into space and doesn't find its way back. So this was cool.
Yeah, that it came back. I also think that it's interesting because I remember the Alpine Run not being particularly amazing. I think there were standout moments for sure, but it seems like MoMA is a song that seems to find its best in shows that aren't like unbelievable,
Yeah.
which is weird,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Which that's actually a really good point. Like, both of these shows outside of this, I think 8, 8, 12, 22 is the stronger show of the two, definitely. And I think even
Yeah.
I think a 2022 show that's devoid of big jams outside of one thing is better than a 2016 show that's only has one notable piece of improvisation. I don't remember exactly what else they played at this show because the Saturday night was the Fluffhead and the
Yeah.
Sunday night was the Richmond Antics and not much else. But yeah, this MoMA came in the first set. Oh yes, jammed out, ass handed.
Yeah.
Which
The Alpine Run, it was weird. I was like, I had wanted to go, I had planned to go, I had gotten tickets, and then it just didn't work out. I had really wanted to go out and, meet Brian Brinkman and like get out
right.
to the Midwest and see some. I've never been to Alpine Valley, even though I'm from the Midwest. So I really had wanted to get out there and it just didn't happen for me. And the whole time I was like, it's going to be the best run of of the tour. Like it's Alpine, like it's the
Well,
end of the
lucky for
tour.
you.
I know. I mean, instead I went to like the armpit of Atlantic City and saw like three, killer
Yeah,
shows.
those
So
were amazing.
I mean, the first night of Atlantic City was like one of, I think, the best shows of the tour. So who knew? But I felt a little bit happy that I didn't miss like three epic shows. But
Yeah, no kidding. I would agree that AC was one of the best runs of the tour for sure. And obviously going into Alpine, expectations were really high because the last time
yes.
they closed the summer tour with a 3-nighter at Alpine, we got two kind of throwaway shows, and then
The
the
Ruby
38-minute
Waves.
Ruby
Yeah.
Waves and all the bust outs and the Iculus and the
Yeah.
everything. The wedding proposal, Yem, like that,
Oh, yeah.
like
Forgot about
everything in
that.
that show. Yeah,
Yeah.
everything in
It
that show.
showed everything.
Yeah. So it's crazy. It's crazy to look at, the difference there and how, like some of the more unlikely spots, like, I mean, AC last year, like 2021 AC, I don't think was as good as 2022 AC. Like
No.
this year was so good. Like that first night, the second set was incredible. The third night was one of the very few shows I got to webcast this summer. I had a day off from camp that night, so I was like,
Yes.
I'm gonna park myself here with my headphones in and watch the show. And I
Oh,
was very happy with that one. Really liked the wave of hope into Yem
I mean,
from that
so
show.
much from those 3 nights were unbelievable, and I can tell you being on the beach in that show, people were going crazy the whole
Hmm.
time, especially the first night. I thought the second night was super strong too, and the third night too. But there was like standout moments from every one of those nights. I think the second set of that first night is one of the best second sets of the whole tour, if not the
100%.
best. It is spectacular from start to finish. I would actually even say like from middle of the first set on.
From
Um,
Sigma
yeah,
onward, yeah.
yeah. It's just
Once they
like
were
there
like,
was.
yeah, we're
We're
dropping
gonna.
a 22-minute Sigma here, and we're just gonna keep going for the rest of the
Yeah,
show.
it was all just space funk. It was just so good, the whole
Yeah,
run. But yeah, but who thought? Like, I didn't think Atlantic City would be like these amazing shows, but you never
I
know.
figured it would be good because
Yeah.
based off of last year's,
Yeah, they
which
were
had
good.
a good amount of standout moments, like the tweezer from the first night I go back to frequently.
Yeah.
You had the Sense intro into MoMA from the third night, which was
Yeah.
great. But
I was
yeah,
there
no,
that night. Yeah, that
yeah,
was cool.
so not a ton of really strong moments outside of those. But yeah, this year's were great. What was crazy to me was listening to that wave of hope jams that just kept going and
Yeah.
going, and then suddenly on a dime they're in Yem,
It was
which I
crazy.
forget where I've talked about this before, but I mentioned it somewhere once. But like that's not a very that's not a song that's very easy to just drop into
No.
when you're in the middle of a jam. Like they're just like playing, and then Trey turns around and is like, "Okay, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4," and then they're in Yem without missing a beat. It's like that's not like real. Like you
People were
can't do that.
freaking out. I was wearing a Yem hat and everybody was like losing their mind. I was like, "Oh my
Yeah.
god." Yeah, it was the best.
Yeah, it's like when you call a song earlier in the show, then they play it, then everyone around you is like, "You were talking about that earlier."
Exactly. You know what's crazy is on those 3 nights, I wore a Mora hat, a tweezer hat, and a Yem hat, and they played each of those songs those 3 nights. It was weird. I was like, "My
Can
hats
you
are
wear
I'm
the
gonna need."
tweezer hat all 4 nights of MSG?
Yes, yes, and I'm just need an Iculus hat now because that's what I'm chasing. So
Oh,
I
there you
need
go.
someone can send me an Iculus hat. Maybe I'll get
How
it.
many how many shows are you at now?
I think I'm at like I don't even know what my number is, 60 something. I haven't seen a ton of shows, 63, 64, something like that.
I'm only at 14, so
Yeah. So
I'm
we can
behind.
still talk about the
I'm
band.
yes.
I'm like afraid to admit that number to people. Like I'm like afraid people shun me and be like, you don't deserve to be on the internet
Then
talking
you'd be
about
like, "No,
fish.
no, no, no. I'm a co-host of a podcast. It's okay.
Exactly. It's okay. I have
I have
legitimacy.
credibility."
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've always been like afraid to admit that. But yeah, I think it doesn't necessarily matter your number. It's just your
No, it doesn't.
devotion to insanity.
Yeah, I listen. I became a big Goose nerd, and people were asking for my opinions before I had even seen them once.
Yeah.
So
I
that
love that.
it works. You just gotta immerse yourself, and if you don't know what you're doing, you just bullshit your way until you do.
There you go. Don't
Yeah,
tell anybody our secrets, Ryan. Come on.
the secrets of the podcasting world.
It's so true. Yeah, but it's so great to talk about this song though because I feel like it's not talked about very often because it's not like this huge jam vehicle.
Hmm. Yeah, and yeah, for so many years it was like, okay, we're gonna get 7 minutes of MoMA
Mhm.
now. Cool. Yeah, and then again, starting last year, starting with the AC version, and then you get last fall the Monkey Man one in San Francisco, and then at the Forum they jammed it out like into it was MoMA into Simple into Waiting All Night, which was like a really cool segment. That show was a lot of fun. But
Yeah.
like it was just, they're like open-ended, leaving it unfinished, but like, that one, unlike the ones that had come before, like the SPAC 2016 and Baker's Dozen and AC, were all like, here's a big 15 to 17 minute type 2 version that's going to be like the anchor of the set that it's in. The Baker's Dozen one coming like as like the second or third song of the show on the second night of the run, which was like, I think that was the first song of the run that was like, okay, we're jamming out unexpected songs here.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
first night, the highlight jam of that show was the Seven Below, I think, in the second set, which is phenomenal. But yeah, then you get the first set of the next night. You get, this huge jammed out MoMA. You get this really great jammed out Breath and Burning, which is underrated. That is a
Yes,
very,
I
very
agree.
good version.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
yeah, but that was kind of the beginning there, and then you get to fast forward to fall 2021. The Monkey Man version was only like 10 or so minutes, but it had that like kind of cool set closing quality to it with the Monkey Man jam, whatever. And then you go to the Forum, and it's just like a 10-minute version, but that goes off into type 2 and segues very nicely into Simple. And so that's kind of the beginning of, okay, like MoMA can actually like be a piece of a second set, like just as a flow, instead
Mhm.
of, being like, we're going to jam this out. It's going to be a special occasion. And then it's going to go back to being, a standard song. So it still is fairly standard most of the time, but there are more and more instances of it being jammed out. They did it again at MSG in April.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
or they jammed it out, which was great. And then, yeah, a couple of times over the summer again.
I mean, the song is interesting because it kind of works in a lot of places in a set list. It's like a good opener. It's a good set 2 opener. It's a good closer. It's working in the middle of sets. Like it's one of those songs that can kind of go
Go
anywhere.
anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, which is really cool. I think this Baker's Dozen is probably second on my list of like favorite ones. I was also going to say the Timber on the night 1 of the Baker's Dozen was jammed out, which is pretty cool too.
Yes.
In addition to that Seven Below. But I think the one at the Baker's Dozen is cool because it's a journey, but it's definitely less funky than like my favorite version from SPAC in 2016. But
Mhm.
it gets so like dark and foreboding. And then it's like super sublime and delicate and gorgeous. And I think there's just like something really, really beautiful about the Baker's Dozen version that I love.
Yeah, there's not a huge peak in that one. It's just
Yeah.
it's about the journey. I think jams like that, there were a few of them in the Baker's Dozen. I also think of like the Taste
Yeah.
from Holes Night, where it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. They're going on such a crazy thing, and then yeah, it's not the hugest peak, but what they're doing on the way to that smaller peak is incredible. Like in both of those jams, and that Taste, I think, is incredibly underrated, because it's
Yeah. Which night is that again?
really good. August 2nd,
Yeah.
Holes Night.
The Holes night. Yeah.
That's part of one of my favorite sets of the whole run too. Like the Mike's Oh Holy Night, Taste,
I mean,
um, then Wingsuit, Sneak and Sally, Weekapog. Like it's a really, really strong set.
ugh,
Um,
the
but yeah,
Baker's Dozen. Are they gonna do it again this summer?
so people think they are, and like it
Yeah.
seems like the credible rumors suggest that they're going to. Um, I don't understand why they would want to. Phish is not a band that ever really does the same thing twice, and I think they've said that they don't want to do the same thing twice. So if
But
they
they do
do it again, it's not going
intervals
to be
over and over
donut
again.
themed. It's not going to
No,
be donut themed.
it would be totally different. Like they would have a different conceit or concept, whatever. But I mean, I think that they love playing Madison Square Garden. They
Yeah.
have obviously like very strong relationships with the people that run MSG. And I think that they feel like they play really well there. And I think that it's an inspiring place for them. It's their favorite place to play. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that that's fair, maybe outside of a festival, but
Which
so,
that's what I thought we were getting for the
well, I
40th
thought so too.
anniversary
I mean, I
next year.
have a hotel room reserved in Watkins Glen just in case, because I'm not camping.
Yeah.
So, I've got one reserved. It's like camp pickup weekend for my kids. Like, I don't know. I'm like, I'm gonna have to like. I've never been to a Phish festival, Ryan.
Yeah,
So
I
like,
I
I
want to
have
so
to go,
badly. That's
right?
bucket list.
It's bucket list stuff. So I'm like, if this happens this summer, it's their 40th anniversary. Like, I'm
They
gonna
haven't had a
have to.
festival. This is the longest
No,
they've gone without a
ever.
festival since the Clifford Ball.
Yes, since they started, and
Yeah.
I feel like
That's
my
and for
kids. I'll
anyone
see them
who's curious,
after.
yeah, exactly. You're
Like,
with your
I'll pick
kids
you up
the whole
after.
year except for when they're at camp. Phish only plays a festival for 3 days.
I know.
Yeah.
The only thing that would be great about the Baker's Dozen is it's literally the whole entire time they're at camp. Like, I would have to miss the first weekend to drop them off, but then
Yeah.
I would
And
just be.
also you get to stay at home for it,
I know. It's
which
kind of
which works well
nice.
for you. For someone like me who's like, "Oh, like if they do the Baker's Dozen, I'm going on Goose Tour." Like like I
Ryan,
can't
you can come
afford New
you
York
can
for
come
3
stay in
weeks.
my house. You can come
Thank
stay in
you.
my house. Yeah.
Thank you.
Stay with me.
I you know what? I would probably try to do some of them.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's a lot. New York is very expensive, especially for a Canadian. But I'm
Yeah.
excited. I'm excited to experience my first real Phish New Year's in December, which that's a month away today.
It's a month away today. I like saw that today on the internet and I was like, wow, I am so excited. There is
Yeah,
nothing like Fish at MSG. And I had so much fun in April and I can't wait to do it again. I
yeah.
can't
I
wait.
feel like years without fall tours also like it just feels like
Yes. So
so
hard.
long since they last played, especially because like the beginning of the year, they played in Mexico, then they played, MSG in April, then they had the spring tour, and then they had summer tour, and then they had Dick's, and then it's like, oh, and then we're just supposed to go 3.5 months with no shows. Like,
I know it's like they
it's kind of
flopped.
rude.
It's weird. It is
It's
kind
kind
of
of rude
rude.
of them,
It's
like,
rude.
to not do this Thanksgiving run, like that
I
was
know.
rumored earlier in the year. Like, come
Yeah,
on, guys.
I made a lot of plans scheduled around that Thanksgiving run. One of my friends like flew back her entire family like on Friday because in case they're going to play Albany for those Saturday and Sunday nights. I was
We
like,
were
we're
Yeah,
so
we were
ready.
like we had hotels booked in Albany
Yeah,
for 3 nights. Like last year too, when there was like that, there was like really solid rumors last year that they were gonna do an extra run. Which in hindsight, knowing that the MSG run would have gotten canceled, I wish they had done because
I
an
know.
extra like 7 or 8 shows of 2021 Fish would not have been a bad thing.
Yeah, especially that fall, right? Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Oh,
I know. When those shows got canceled last December,
I was so sad.
I was so gutted. I mean, I had just joined the pod like the month before and I had spent twice a week that month talking about like
How excited you
December
were?
fish and
Yeah.
MSG fish and New York fish and like all those things. And it was just crushing,
Yeah.
absolutely crushing.
It it
But
it
then
it
April
did
was so good that it
Yeah,
was
it did end
fine.
up working well for me because I got COVID on like the 29th or 30th.
Oh
So
boy.
that would have not been a good situation. Like I
No.
think I would have like gone insane having to miss a
Yeah.
show because of
That
that.
would have
So
been
I'm glad
devastating.
that it worked out well. And I now am dreading having to go from like, my one MSG experience. I was able to wear shorts to all the shows. Like I
I
didn't have to
know.
worry
It
about
was
a
really
jacket. Now it's
nice.
like, oh, it's gonna be freezing and possibly really snowy.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, because of climate change, it probably won't be snowy. It'll probably just be like cold and miserable, but
Let's hope.
it's warm
Cold and
inside the
miserable.
venue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
warm
it's
inside the venue, and you don't
yeah.
care once you're inside, and like,
I mean, I
MSG is.
care because I have to lug my jacket around, which is it's a very
It's true.
first world problem to,
It is. But if you're
complain
not on
about
the floor, like, the
that.
floor is the real problem
Correct.
with the
I am
jacket.
not on
Like,
the floor.
yeah.
I
I'm
am not a floor guy.
devastated. I'm not, like, a rail riding person, but the floor at MSG, yeah, like, it's a special place. It's like church, and I
Yeah.
don't try to get up front. I don't, like, fight the nonsense. I'll hang in the back. I'm on, like, usually, like, page side, like, almost all the way back, and I just find a good spot, put my jacket in a trash bag and, like, tie it to the rail,
The
on the
chop
side
method.
there. Yeah, and it works, and it's a pretty special place. I try to
Yeah.
get down there. I didn't get floor tickets this year. It's fine, but,
You
it's
have
special.
tickets though? Like
I
you're
have
good?
tickets.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah. I
scored
can't
in
wait.
the lottery, which
I did
like
not.
this
That is
is this is the
amazing.
first time I've hit in the lottery for anything. I think last year my dad hit one of the nights. But like
It's
I
kind of
like got
crushing.
the email and it's like you got a 4-day pass and the seats are good.
That's
like,
insane.
like, could
See,
not believe it.
I've hit in the lottery a fair amount at
Mhm.
MSG, but it's like the 400s, which is
Right.
why I know I only put floor to do the lottery, which is why I never get it anymore. Because I'm like, I know I can get tickets in another
Everybody
spot in
gets
the
in. Yeah.
room. Everybody gets in, but I'm not like, I'm going to have a hard time getting rid of like 400 levels 4-day passes.
Right.
So, I'm like, I'll just put
That's
down for
fair.
floor. And if I get them, it'll be the best thing ever. And if not, so no, I'm going to be I'm going to be exactly where I was last year, which is in like the 200s. I was on the floor the first night last year, or in
Mhm.
April, but then I'm like in the 200s, like in this section that's like right kind of over page. It's great.
Oh, right over page. Nice.
Yeah.
That's a good view. I got 208, which is like Mike's side, but like at the other end of the arena, so like great view of the lights. And
Oh,
I'm
nice.
like towards the bottom of the section, so I don't have like,
Perfect.
upper 200 obstructed view. So
The
I was
upper
very happy
200s
about that.
behind the Chase Bridge is a nightmare.
Yeah.
A
I was on the
nightmare.
Chase Bridge in April, which was cool. I
That's
got
kind of fun.
yeah, I got 2 4-day passes there in the on sale, which was very lucky. But
Yeah,
that was
that's
a really
amazing.
cool vantage point because while I didn't have a great view of the lights, I had a perfect view of the crowd and I could see the band really well. So
Yeah.
I loved that spot, but I'm excited to get, a better view of the lights this
Yeah,
time
I
around.
won't have a view of the lights, which is kind of annoying. Like I didn't have it, during the whole like gag and stuff in April, which was kind of a bummer, but whatever. It was great.
You didn't need to be
No.
though getting the lights for that. Like
Yeah.
that was amazing. I can't wait to experience like the balloon drop and whatever they have in store for us.
It's going to be
Um,
amazing.
it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, that is a good place to wrap up, I think. Megan, thank you so much again for being on today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I look forward to collaborating many more times in the future on many different podcasts.
Let's do it. I'll talk fish with you anytime, Ryan.
Yes. And we're still developing the official launch of Always Almost Megan.
I, I can't wait. I can't wait. I had so much fun with all of you, and I love talking about Goose. And I'm super Goose noob, but I really like Goose. So I love listening to you guys, and I loved being on with you. That was really, really fun, and everybody was really nice to me. So thanks.
You try. Yes. Well, thank you again so much. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Hope you have a fantastic day, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, everyone.